Okay, with our review aside, we are going to move into creating methods. So when we create a method, we already have seen methods in their creation or their declaration state. Both the start and the update in our Unity C# files are the beginnings of method creation. Now, what methods allow us to do is it allows us to reuse code really easily. The syntax is we start off with a return type. So we've been talking about data types already. We have seen void start, void update. What we are going to start creating, though, is something that returns an integer. So in this sort of a case, it would be int, then the identifier or the name of the method, the parameter list, and then whatever code we want to run. Whatever code we want this method to be used for, that will allow us to reuse it. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to jump in, create a new project in Unity, which will be day 2 project. We're going to create a method called add and print. This here is going to be the sum of it so far. We've seen voids on our start and update. Void essentially means that nothing is going to be returned. The identifier or name of the method is add and print. Its parameters, it actually has 2. It's going to require 2 integers to be passed into it when we write the method call. So once we call this method, it's going to take these 2 integers, which it sees as A and B, and we're going to have debug log print out the sum of whatever A is and whatever B is A plus B. If you're starting to notice that some of this looks like algebra, you would be absolutely correct. It looks like algebra. So once we actually write this method, we're then going to go ahead and call it inside start. The method call is one of our statements, so it's going to be add and print, and then we're going to go ahead and give it 2 numbers. And of course we can put in any whole number value in where we have each of these hashtags. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Remember, we're going to create a new project in Unity. We're going to name it day 2. New. Now, if you aren't creating other projects in Unity while you're in this class, your folder should be the exact same folder, like mine is, the June 2017 PF folder. If you do happen to have another class and you're creating other Unity projects in other folders, make sure you are putting in all of the programming foundations into that first programming foundations folder. Okay, so project day 2, create. I am so excited. I love methods. Now, you will hear other programmers call methods by the name of functions. And yes, all methods are functions, but not all functions are actually methods. We will get into the details of this next week, and it has to do with the type of programming that C# allows for, which is object-oriented programming. It's why we have the class files. Okay, so we are probably just going to stick to one script for this day. So we will go ahead and first create our game object, create empty. In our assets, we'll go ahead and create our C# script, since this is going to be the only script we're going to use here today. Last name, first name, underscore day 2. Now the reason why we're going to use only one script for today is that we're going to build off of what we're doing in here. Alright, so I'm going to click on my game object again. I'm going to make sure I click and drag and make sure it is actually set up and attached to our blank game object. Now let's go ahead and open Visual Studio. Ooh, it's actually opening faster this time. Sort of. Okay. So we have our void start, which is what we will still be using this time around, and we have our void update. Now I will try to scroll in on this, but if you look to the side here next to each of these, there is a subtraction symbol where we can actually click on these to minimize these methods. I want you to do this for right now, because when you're I've noticed when students create methods, sometimes they end up creating them inside start or update. So if we minimize them, we can then first off make a comment here saying end of class and file do not code beyond here. So this last curly brace, and as soon as I click on it and it highlights, you'll see that it corresponds to the open curly brace for our day 2 public class. So any of the code that we want to write, we have to make sure it's in between these 2 curly braces. So I'm going to give myself some space, and we're going to go ahead and make a comment. Let's see, it's add and print, add and print takes into ints, adds them together, and prints to the console. Okay, so I'm just going to open start for right now. So starts off with void. Now this void corresponds to our return type. If you notice from the previous day's scripts, we didn't use the keyword return anywhere. If we needed to return something, this would say something other than void. And we'll get into that a little bit later. Our add and print is going to take everything in on its own, and it's just going to print it out for us. So I'm going to minimize that. So because we are not returning anything, this will also be void add and print. Okay, so here's where we're starting our method declaration. Now this set of parentheses is going to take our parameter list. So I'm going to use int a and int b for our parameters, and I'm going to put in a set of curly braces. I'm going to hit enter, and now this is starting to look a lot like where we've coded inside start. And we're going to do something similar. So we're going to start off with our debug.log, and we want to say the sum of concatenate A and concatenate B is concatenate the sum. So notice I am not copying and pasting. The reason for this is there are actually different, in all of the characters that we type, there's ASCII and Unicode, and there are actually different parentheses, double quotations, single quotations, semicolons. If you would copy and paste from here, it's going to break here. And you'll have to actually retype the entire thing anyway. Alright, so we're going to do the sum of, to sum, the sum of plus A. So it's going to tell us exactly what the number is that was input. Oh, I forgot my quotations. So if you miss a quotation, it will start putting in whatever it thinks you're wanting. So make sure you're looking up as you're typing. The sum of A, space, and B. Let's see. Good, I did make it short. Space is space concatenate a set of parentheses. If it doesn't put in the closing parenthesis, you will have to put it in. So make sure that when you get to this point, you should have two closing parentheses together. Now inside this set of parentheses is A plus B, which means that this is actually going to add these two integers together and then concatenate it onto the rest of this as a complete statement. And in order for us to make sure that that statement is closed, we put in our semicolon. Cool. Okay, so save. Make sure our star is gone. I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to play, and there's nothing. So the reason why methods are so amazing is that once you create one, you are able to call it anywhere. So like our debug log, we've called it in start. We will call it in other places as well. We've just called it here in add and print. But what we haven't done is inside start, we haven't done add and print. And if you have completed your method correctly, it will start bringing it up for you. Add and print, and I'm going to do the numbers 12 and 24, semicolon. So this is our method call statement. It's going to call to our add and print. We've given it 12 and 24, which means it should be printing out something that has the sum of 36. So let's see, make sure we save, and then play. The sum of 12 and 24 is 36. How amazing is that? Okay, so we're going to go ahead and turn that off. Now, this is great and all, but this only does one thing for us, right? This automatically adds and it will automatically print out the sum just in this space. But what if we need the sum? Alright, let's go back to, no, I want that. So we've done our add and print. Now we're going to create a new method. This one is actually going to return a value. So we're going to build an add method that returns an int data type and has 2 ints as its parameters. It's going to be very similar to the one that we just did, except we are actually going to be using that return keyword, and we're going to give it a different name, obviously. So this is just going to be an add method. We can give it any 2 numbers and it will return the sum of those 2 numbers. Now, there are different ways that we're actually able to call this. We can actually declare an integer and then assign it to the add method call. So int sum equals add and whatever our numbers are. And then we can print out that actual integer. Or we could just put the add in to the debug log itself. Alright, so let's go ahead and take a look at that. So our add and print is great, but we need something that's more easily reused. So I'm going to go ahead and comment that out. Now we're going to go ahead and leave the add and print here. I'm just going to minimize it. Making single line comments when at the top of your methods, just to say, hey, this is this method, whatever you give it as its identifier name, and it does something like this. That is a great way to remind you exactly what the method should be doing. So instead of void, this time we're going to say int add, and we're going to use, because when we create a method, these parameters, so this variable int a and this variable int b, they only exist inside these curly braces, which means if we want to, we can use the same int a comma int b. Now for this add, we're going to go ahead and use the keyword return. Because this return type is no longer void, it is int, this method needs to actually return a value. So we're going to return a plus b, semicolon. This is another form of a statement. This is a basic return statement. Now, the main reason you guys would ever be using a return statement is with method creation and method declarations just like this one, where you need to return a certain value. Okay? There are other reasons to use this sort of return, but you guys probably won't use them. Okay, so now that we have our add, we are actually going to create an integer. So we want to make sure that we create our variables that we're wanting to use over and over again. We want to create those at the top here. So I'm going to create an int sum, and I'm just going to make it a declaration statement. And then inside our start, we can then assign sum. So we're going to say sum equals add, and we're going to use our same numbers, 12 and 24. So now we can use our debug log and we can say the sum of the 2 numbers is, and we already know that whatever sum is, we're going to put in sum, but it's going to come back as 36. So So we assign sum via the add method that we created, int add. Then we wrote our debug log that put in the sum. Make sure we save. And then we're going to go ahead and play. The sum of the two numbers is 36. Perfect. Okay. So now that you know how to actually create methods, I'm going to go ahead and cover real quick operators and orders of precedence. So you've already started to see so far that the operators that you've used in algebra are used in coding, and pretty much the order of operations is the exact same. Parentheses always happens first, which is why in our script, when I wanted to add A and B in our add and print method, I made sure to put parentheses around it because this is always going to be done first. Make sense? The next in line is multiplication, then division, then modulus, then addition, and at last subtraction. So this modulus operator, if it scares you, it really shouldn't. It's really simple. What happens is that it gives you the remainder from a division equation. So if we were to say int remainder equals 10 mod 3, that remainder variable will end up equaling 1. We will go ahead and we will actually do this in code real quick. We're going to do this right in the start after our sum of the two numbers. So we're not going to reuse this remainder again, so we can go ahead and actually declare it inside start. So int remainder is going to equal 10 mod 3. And we're going to debug.log, and then we're going to put in remainder. And then semicolon. Fantastic. We'll make sure to save. Go back to our Unity. And there is our remainder. Just 1. Because remember, when we divide 10 by 3, it goes into it 3 times. 3 times 3 is 9. What's left over is 1. Now, in design and in games, this might actually come in very handy for you to know, because finding the remainder of something can actually help you decide if a number is even or odd. So if 10 mod 2 has a remainder of 0 or equals 0, then you know that that number, that 10, is even. Make sense? Okay. So we don't need these anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and I can't remember the short key code for it. But I'm going to go ahead and put that at the bottom. All right. So your next steps are going to be to create 2 reusable methods that do the following: subtracts one number from another and multiplies one number to another number. These both should return integers and should have 2 integers as their parameters. That is the incorrect word. Arguments is not the correct thing. It's a parameter. Okay, so I will see you guys shortly.